So, I don't add water to the paint. So it's always a tricky question, right? Because I don't like take water and put it in your paint to help it flow. You use the water that's on the brush, right? So your brush will soak up water, right? Like that. So that's a lot of water in that brush. I didn't wipe it on the paper towel or anything. Hard to see, but there's a drop of water there. Boom, water. So the brush is holding however much water it can hold if you don't wipe it off on anything. That's a lot of wetness. Now, if I take that wetness over into, say, this green and pull it out a bit, right, now I've got a green that when I paint with it is very, very fluid, and also less opaque. So 100% of my painting off the brush is me adjusting the amount of water on the brush before I go to the palette, right? Because if I go here and I dry this brush off now, I get all the water off of it, and then go grab green that isn't in that same spot. Let's zoom in here. Kind of see, right? But on my hand, right, you see how I just got kind of a slight green over that gray blue. But now if I don't have any water on the brush, now I get a very opaque green, right? Just full coverage right off the brush. That was with only, the brush is still damp because you put it over here in the water. And then no matter how much you wash it over here, dry it off, it's still going to have enough water to keep it flowing, right? So I'll paint a lot like that with base coats, where I've wiped most of it off, grab some color, come over here and paint a base coat because I don't want to do it 10 times. I want it to cover really well on the first time, right? Then as I go into brighter colors, maybe only wipe 2 times, so now I have more moisture on there, and grab some of that green that's going to be less opaque now because I have more moisture on my brush, right? And then I kind of blend that down. Right? And you can see how that first spot was opaque. The second one, it gives me green, but it's now letting the bottom layer show through. So I might want to do my blending that way. Right? But as a matter of flow, yes, paint will flow differently as you add more water to it, but you have to be careful because it will start to just skate around on the model. It'll go into recesses if it's too wet, if you have too much water. So you might have a nice shade in a recess. You get a bright color that you're doing as a highlight, get it too wet, put it on the model, and it drips into your shadow, and now your shadow's messed up. So you got to be really careful. So that's why I don't like adding water directly to the paint on the palette. It's why I don't use a wet palette, right? All the control that I need is the water in the brush, either more or less. So I break it down into kind of 10,000 foot by saying I'll rinse my brush to get the previous paint off. I will go directly into the paint without wiping it if I want super thin paint, right? Like that first layer of green we put on. Right? Super thin paint. I'll wipe it once if I want to do just a little bit of filtering like this. I'll wipe it again if I want to start getting more opacity like over here. And then I'll wipe it 3 or 4 times if I would just want the pure color. Right? That's really all you have to worry about until you get into things like specific glazing. You want to make a particular paint, in a bulk quantity, so you might mix it up, or you use your wet palette to thin it down to a layer where it's great for glazing. Fantastic, right? Adding a lot of water to it then when you know what to expect and you know how to use it. When we're glazing, if I just come over and grab a bunch of water on the brush and I get a very thin paint going on, so I know that you see that big droplet of green on there. It's not very opaque, right? I can put it over that red and still see the red, right? But I want to get rid of most of the moisture before I come over here and paint on this model, right? Because that way I don't leave a big droplet of paint and I get just enough color to do what I'm looking to do. But not so much that it starts floating around, like I said, skating into crevices and things like that. So you just have to be very careful as you put more water into it.